And today I would like to talk about the proliferation of hijacked journals. And I would like to speak about two research projects. One project was already published, and the second is my current research project that I'm doing on hijacked journals. So, what are hijacked journals? So, hijacked journals represent a type of cybercrime. They mimic legitimate, authentic journals and copy their metadata, like ISSN code, their title, and they cheat potential authors. So they use this open access model of publishing, they collect fees, and this cybercrime nowadays is $1 million business because a journal that succeeded to index its not legitimate content in Scopus, for example, can have an income of more than $1 million during several months. So it's very profitable business. It is important to distinguish hijacked journals from predatory journals, because hijacked journals are legitimate journals. They are not legal. They are not registered anywhere. Predatory journals, from the legal point of view, they are legitimate journals because they are registered, they have their official title, official ISSN code, and so on. Both types of journals violate publication ethics, but hijacked journals also violate intellectual property rights because they use the title of original authentic journals. And in many jurisdictions, journal hijacking can be considered as a fraud, as a criminal offense. Well, according to the paper of in the Nature, some predatory publishers also can be considered as a fraud, but it's just individual case, though all hijacked journals and their publishing strategy can be considered as a fraud. So the papers submitted to hijacked journals are not considered to be published. But anyway, they are cited by good journals. The papers in predatory journals, they are officially published. And why it is important to speak about it, because the consequences of published and not published papers are different. For example, if hijacked journals index their content in Scopus, then Scopus deletes this content, and this procedure is not transparent. In case of predatory journals, if the journals discontinued, this procedure is transparent and all papers remain in Scopus, for example. So both journals, they have different strategies to inflate impact factor, to provide fake editor boards, and so on. So they have some things in common, but it's important to distinguish some legal procedures and the consequences of hijacked journals and predatory journals. So what are the features of hijacked journals? Here you can see the clone of famous Soviet and Russian journal Novy Mir. This is a legendary journal in Soviet times, and nowadays even it's national heritage, because some, for example, Nobel laureate Solzhenitsyn published his One Day of Ivan Denisovich in this journal. And so what you can see, it's a literature journal where you can find some poems, short stories, but also some theoretical works in philology. So that's why it's indexed in Web of Science. And so you can see some papers about big data, about hospitality, and something Google search engine that is really not connected with literature. And here, pay attention to DOI. It starts with 16, though the real DOI always starts with 10. And also here, another feature of hijacked journals, it's their editor boards. here again, Novi Mir Research Journal. Sometimes hijacked journals add some words journal of or research journal, just I have no idea why, but I have a hypothesis they do it because of the legal purposes, not to use the exact title. And so here you can see the editor boards. All these people are real, but if you look, that this list was totally copied from a legitimate journal, World Scientific. There is another way how hijacked journals create the editor boards. For example, these are recent cases, Annals of the Romanian Society for Cell Biology and Converter. All of them, they have the same editor-in-chief, Rowan Olin. Who is Rowan Olin? This person doesn't exist. And actually, all editorial members here are not real people. It's just a combination of letters that look like names. They have also, there is a total lack of peer review. And I actually submitted one not original paper. I just copied a wiki page and submitted to this Journal of Annals of the Romanian Society for Cell Biology. I've got immediate answer that actually the title of my paper looks like of already published paper. Please change the title. So I changed the title, and in several days I've got this kind of reply that my paper is submitted, originality 80%. There is just no original words in this paper, and so I was proposed to pay $200 to publish this paper in the current issue of the journal. So actually, why it is a challenge? I started to study this problem 1 year ago in summer 2020, when one journal, a hijacked journal, was detected, Talent Development Excellence, where some Russian scholars published papers with translation plagiarism. So it was how it was detected. And I found that this is a huge problem. There are more than 200 registered cases of hijacked journals, but many cases of hijacked journals are even not documented. So there are lists of hijacked journals. 2 lists are updated by Indian Grant Commission, and there are some anonymous volunteers who sometimes update the list of hijacked journals that was initially created by Jeffrey Bill. But I tried to collaborate with all these lists. I sent to all these lists links of hijacked journals, but actually I've got no reply. So lists of hijacked journals are not updated regularly. And this is a big challenge for scientific community, for many authors, especially from developing countries. So another challenge is a lack of peer review, and there is a distribution of such papers everywhere as the citations in legitimate journals. They penetrate in some legitimate symptomatic databases like Scopus and others, and they inflate publication record, so of authors. And also important that hijacked journals disappear after the domain expires. So it's like a star. It appears for and shines for some period of time, and after it explodes and totally disappears with all published archives of the journal. What is also important, that hijacked journals are detected only after some period of time. So it's not possible to predict a hijacked journal. And there are several methods how it's possible to do. So it's possible to analyze the domain and the website with the Whois method. And so Bohannon actually analyzed all the websites, domains of the journals in the Web of Science, and he detected 24 hijacked domains, and 2 domains were used as hijacked journals. There are several papers which introduced and developed a classification algorithm approach to identify hijacked journals. So if you look at the website and you can, using this classification algorithm, you can understand, okay, if it is a hijacked journal or not. But this algorithm does allow you to find new hijacked journals. And so this this is a problem. And when I found actually found these first cases of hijacked journals, I actually was a bit shocked, because this problem is really not analyzed in the literature. In the Web of Science database, there are only 19 papers about hijacked journals, and this problem was first detected in 2011, so 10 years of the when cyber criminals actually cheat the authors. And so it actually challenged me to start to study this problem. So I found, so this journal, Waffen and Kostumk, it is a clone of a German journal devoted to military costume and arm. And one Russian scholar found the citation on his paper in psychology in a Russian citation database e-library. And he asked how it's possible that the journal about military costume and arm cites a paper about psychology. And so I analyzed the journal, and I found that this is a hijacked journal. I analyzed archive to find actually the paper that cited his paper, and I found that a lot of papers in this archive are also present in other hijacked journals. And then it made me think of a problem, how actually hijacked journals replenish archive, because archive is another important component of any journal, as title, ISSN code, and archive. And actually, according to the economic theory of crime, fraudulent publishers should maximize the utility function given the probability that the fraud is detected and punished. Journal hijacking, cybercrimes have a very low risk of punishment. Actually, no owner is detected, and nobody is punished. Actually, the first hijacker who is associated with some post-Soviet country who started to create hijacked journals in 2011, his network is working even nowadays. It means that using this approach, fraudulent publishers should minimize the costs of detecting the fake status of the journal, and so it also relates to the archive, how they replenish it. So actually, what are the possibilities for a hijacked journal? To create an archive, to use the content of an aesthetic journal, to leave empty content, to create original content of the journal also by just some automatically generated papers, or to create a recycled content. So as for the content of aesthetic journal, quite no hijacked journals use it because of the probability of being detected, because actually the journals from aesthetic journals are are cited, and authors or scholars read them. And so this is not a good idea also from the legal point of view. To leave empty content is also not a good idea, because journals have to show that they continue to publish this journal during many years. And empty content doesn't actually create a confidence that this journal is legitimate. Another possibility, another two possibilities to create original content, it's high costs, or automatically generate the papers. Actually, I know only two journals, hijacked journals, that use automatically generated archive. But most used method is to create a recycled content. So to use papers that were published in other hijacked journals or in predatory journals, because you just change the title of the journal and you publish it in archive. So here you can see some examples of how journals actually deal with their archives, or they circulate the papers between journals. Sometimes they publish the archive of just 1 or 2 issues, and then they put, sorry, you don't have access to this article and you have to purchase the archives and paying something, or kindly mail to the journal to access these contents, also with some mistakes. And here, Solid State Technology and HSB International, these are two journals that used, hijacked journals that used automatically generated archives. And here you can see that some papers by Lord Byron, Christian Andersen, and James Joyce, and just somebody had a sense of humor to do that. And so my argument was that I argue that fraudulent publishers minimize their costs by recycling already published papers to replenish the archive of newly created hijacked journals within the network. And so the goal of the research is to detect hijacked journals on the basis of the same texts. So I extracted the information from the first journal, Waffen and Kostumk, just the title, authors, and affiliation, so how they represent archives. And I used custom search to search for these titles. I memorized first 10 internet addresses. It was enough because I manually checked how many times the same text can be used by other journals. So maximum was 6. So 10 was more than enough, and also taking consideration possible bias. So after that, I rearranged all these links in alphabetical order, and that websites that appeared in the results several times were checked to identify hijacked journals. So I applied snowball method. I did about more than 57,000 research queries, and it allowed me to detect 62 domains, websites of hijacked journals, of 57 authentic journals, because some original journals had several websites, clone websites. This journal seemed to be the network of hijacked journals by the same organizer. I think the organizer is somewhere in India. I know it from the data from their registration of their domain. And also this method allowed to predict 2 hijacked journals before their websites became operational. So it's the case when if you access the homepage, you don't see that the website is looks like a journal, but inside the website you can have a lot of archives that are already published there. And so after a certain period of time, this journal became operational. So they changed the home website. So this is the first time when you could really predict a hijacked journal. And so it showed that there is a circulation of text between hijacked journals and predatory journals. So this is, if you plot all these links, so if two journals share the same text, there is an edge in this network. And this is a single component. It's logic because it's expected because the snowball method was applied. And the graph has an average degree of 33. It means that each journal has, on average, 33 links with other journals of this network. If we look at the information of the registration of the domains, we can see that the first journal was registered in 2017, and in 2020 the frequency is much higher. So here you can see that on 8th of January 9 journals were registered. I don't have enough information to judge about 2017 and 18 because actually web domains could expire. Another result of this project that I found that a lot of journals, 9 journals, and the information of 9 journals was compromised in different syntematic databases, like in Scopus, Saimaga, and Russian e-library. And I actually searched for hijacked journals in Scopus in spring this year, and in May of 2021 I found I detected about 30 journals that were indexed in Scopus. The reaction of Scopus, okay, this is not so important because it's just 30 journals. It's not much. But if we look at the share of non-authentic or not legitimate content in Scopus by country, the results are shocking. Because in May 2021, the share of hijacked journals content in Uzbekistan is 41% of all papers published in Scopus in 2021. It's a lot. And actually, in June, it was more than 50%. In Iraq, it's about 8%, and in India, 1.5%, but we have to take into consideration that India publishes a lot of papers. And this also has another consequence, that some other organizations import the data from Scopus, like World Health Organization. It creates the database of papers about COVID. And you can see a lot of papers on COVID from hijacked journals. So I detected 383 papers from 3 hijacked journals in this World Health Organization library. So these papers have actually no peer-reviewed papers are in this library. So this was about the detection. I have 5 minutes more, I think, and I wanted to present some results of my current project. And I asked myself who published the papers in hijacked journals. Because nowadays it's a common belief that the potential clients of hijacked journals are naive authors who are not able to distinguish between honest and fraudulent journals. So you can find this statement in different papers. However, is it true? So it's just a statement which was not investigated. Or, in other words, are naive authors the only group of authors who submit their papers to hijacked journals? So I have an alternative hypothesis that some authors choose hijacked journals and submit their papers in order to increase their publication record. And so I based my hypothesis on my last research on circulation of papers between hijacked journals and predatory journals, and also I know the cases of plagiarism in hijacked journals. So my hypothesis was that dishonest authors constitute another group of clients who submit their articles to hijacked journals. And so they are attracted by fast publication with no peer review. And this is due to publication-based performance indicators in many countries. So, and my research strategy was quite straightforward. I decided to test texts published in hijacked journals for plagiarism. And because of the fact that plagiarism is considered to be one of the most serious forms of academic misconduct, so those authors who commit plagiarism can be considered as dishonest authors. So how I selected these papers, I just used known list of hijacked journals, and I checked those where we can find an active website. So 88 websites are currently active, and 62 websites provide an access to their papers. So due to my previous study, it was very important not to analyze archives of the journals, because we know that they circulate the papers, and so that was not my idea. My idea was to understand the papers that were really submitted to the journal. That's why I selected last 3 issues of each hijacked journal. And then for most journals, I selected each 10th paper for the analysis, and the first paper was randomly selected. For some journals that had enormous number of papers, I used, that had about 2,000 papers in one issue, so I checked each 20th, 30th, or 50th paper. Overall, I downloaded 963 papers. 2 papers I didn't analyze because one was a correction notice in a hijacked journal. This also exists. And 1 paper was not possible to check for plagiarism. So I used Urkund or original. Now this is, and I manually checked each paper. And the results are that the current average level of not original text is 18%. And I found a lot of types of academic misconduct in these papers. Blatant plagiarism, so approximately 14% of papers, 140 papers, had text similarities at the level of 50% or more. There is plagiarism with rewriting, and Urkund actually detects very well rewriting when you just simply change words to synonym. Urkund is able to detect it. So plagiarism from papers with different set of authors, when one paper was published 5 years ago and then you add some new authors, or you actually get rid of some authors and then new, so there are a lot of strategies. Self-plagiarism and data fabrication. When you plagiarize a paper and you update the statistics. For example, you plagiarize from a paper of 2015 and there is statistics of 2013, and you plagiarize and change 2013 to 2018, for example. This is a quite easy way to detect data fabrication. So authors, so there are 2,293 authors of all these papers, and most of them are from developing countries, especially India. And interesting part in that authors of most papers originated from the same country. So international collaboration can be considered as an exception. I just found about 10 papers with authors from different countries. And so you can see here the distribution of affiliation countries of authors. Here, India, Indonesia, China, Iraq, Uzbekistan, also papers from Russia, so post-Soviet countries like Kazakhstan, Russia, Uzbekistan, from East Asia, Southeast Asia, and some African countries. There are some authors from Italy and United States who submitted their papers to hijacked journals. So what conclusions I can make? So this study confirms the hypothesis that the authors are not as naive as it is commonly believed in the literature, because the absence of strict requirements for publication and plagiarism checks allows authors to publish texts with a significant amount of plagiarism. And thus, these findings of the current study suggest that fraudulent journals attract dishonest authors. The hypothesis of the presence of honest authors who have been deceived by hijacked journals is also not excluded. However, the share of articles without plagiarism is currently only 34%. So only 1/3 of all articles don't have signs or traces of plagiarism, but we have to take in consideration that Urkund, for example, is not able to detect translation plagiarism. And I think this is, for example, the case of Russian authors. So in reality, so this is what Urkund was able to detect. But the study currently has some limitation, because, for example, for those authors who plagiarized just some phrases or some abstracts, some just small pieces of the work, maybe they can be considered as dishonest, but as authors who are not aware of publication ethics. It's possible that in developing countries, also authors are not familiar with citation strategies and so on. So this could be an idea to make some interviews with the authors to understand why they publish and if it is dishonesty or just lack of awareness. So this is what I wanted to tell today, and I have some acknowledgements for those who helped me. Oh, thank you very much.